Oh, hey, just checking out the MEGA65 User's Guide, and we are now in Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is all about configuring your MEGA65, so buckle up because we're going to unlock the customization potential of your MEGA65 by exploring the configuration utility, the SD card setup, and we're going to download files from the MEGA65 file host. But wait, there's more! Remember, this series is a treasure trove of YouTube videos and companion blog posts to enhance your experience. The blog posts are packed with all the links, errata, and yes, there are some mistakes, and resources you need to supercharge your MEGA65 journey, while the videos provide the visuals to make everything crystal clear. First up is the configuration utility. This powerful tool allows you to fine-tune the settings of your MEGA65. Here's how you access this utility. You want to power off your MEGA65. Hold the Alt key, power on the MEGA65. You'll see a menu called the MEGA65 Mega OS Hypervisor with several options. Press 1 to enter the configuration utility. This utility contains 6 pages of options: the input, chipset, video, audio, networking, and done. You can move between pages using the left and right cursor keys and move up and down on the page using, you guessed it, the up and down cursor keys. Press return or space to toggle a setting or change a value. Let's see what options we have by starting with the input page. Now, the input page allows you to configure mouse settings for the 2 peripheral ports. Here's what you need to do. Select the type of mouse connected to each port, of which there are 2, Joy 1 and Joy 2. Options include normal. Use this option if you have an original Commodore mouse. Amiga to 1351 Amiga mouse, great for those who prefer to use an Amiga mouse. Hey, don't have an original Commodore mouse? Consider a Mouster adapter. This adapter allows you to use a modern mouse to emulate an original Commodore mouse. It's a slick device and highly recommended for MEGA65 users. I'll have a link to that down in the video description below. Next up is the de-jitter settings. This adjusts the sensitivity in Commodore 1351 mouse mode to avoid jitter in the mouse pointer. Leave this setting on when using a 1351 mouse in normal mode. Let's take a look at the features of the chipset page. First up is the time and date. We set up the real-time clock in an earlier chapter, but if you need to do that again, follow these steps. Select the time or date field. Type the complete value. Press return. When you press return, the settings for the RTC will update immediately. Now, this is not true for other settings. You use the done screen to activate those changes. Now, we'll cover this later. Next area is DMagic Revision, where you can choose which direct memory access or DMA controller to use on the MEGA65. You have the option of F018B, choose for the enhanced DMA controller functionality, the F018, choose for the specific C65 compatibility needs, which is unlikely for most of you. Continuing on, we have the F011 disk controller. With this option, it selects where the MEGA65 looks for a boot disk when switched on. The options are an SD card disk image, ideal for fast boot times and easy updates, the 3.5-inch floppy drive, the hard physical drive, which is perfect for retro enthusiasts who love physical media and love hearing those floppy drive sounds. For convenience and speed, I recommend you use the SD card. If you want to change the default disk image that's being used, you can change that here. This is great when you have your own floppy disk that you want to boot on a regular basis and not the default. Now, you also have long FN support or long file name support, which toggles long file name support on the SD card. Leave this option enabled unless you find you have issues reading file names longer than 11 characters. The next page is the video page, which configures video settings. These are identical to the onboarding options when you first set up your MEGA65. Video mode will toggle between PAL and NTSC modes. If you have an original CRT monitor using the VGA port, Choose the option based on your display's compatibility. PAL, or Phase Alternating Line, and NTSC, or the National Television System Committee, are analog television standards that determine the resolution and the refresh rate of the video signal. PAL is common in Australia, Africa, China, Europe, and Australia, while NTSC is common in North America, South America, the Philippines, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. When using a modern digital display, the MEGA65 can emulate either PAL or NTSC mode, but there are some performance differences. For instance, PAL mode runs at 50 Hz, while the NTSC mode runs at 60 Hz. This difference in refresh rate can affect the speed at which software runs and which audio plays. PAL mode has a resolution of 720 by 576 pixels, while the NTSC mode has a resolution of 720 by 480 pixels. Now note, you can conveniently toggle this setting using the freezer menu as well. We'll spend more time in the freezer in a future chapter. The next menu is digital video. You can enable or disable digital video sound. Enable enhanced with audio if your display has built-in speakers so you get the integrated audio. In rare cases, your DVI display may require you to select the DVI only no audio option. CRT emulation will enable you to make the picture look like a vintage cathode ray tube, or CRT, display for that nostalgic experience. This will add software-produced scan lines to the display. Next, let's take a look at audio settings. So it's time to configure the MEGA65 sound system. Tip: you'd only need to make any changes if you have specific use cases. I recommend the defaults. So what are those defaults? Well, the audio output. You can choose between stereo and mono or monaural output. Choose stereo for an immersive sound and to activate the ability to use the freezer's audio mixer to pan the 4 MEGA65 sound interface device, or SID chips, left and right. Choose mono for a single SID, which in some cases is better for specific retro software use cases. SID generation. The MEGA65 can emulate either a 6581 or an 8580 SID chip. Commodore installed the 6581s in early Commodore 64s. Later, Commodore used the 8580 in newer C64s and the C128. Why would you use one over the other? Well, the 6581 had flaws that some software exploited for better sound. If you run into these games, you can experience them as the programmers intended on the MEGA65 by using this setting. You can also swap the stereo channels, which will switch the stereo mix to use the opposite speakers. Handy for a quick fix if you get those speakers in the wrong side of the monitor. There's also a built-in audio amplifier which controls the amplifier connected to the 3.5mm audio jack. Set this to on when you want to power some headphones, or off for line level signal connected to powered speaker or potentially your capture device. All right, let's move on to the network page. Unlike earlier Commodore computers, the MEGA65 includes an Ethernet port. How cool is that? But it does not include a hardware-assigned media access controlled, or MAC, address. Every device on your network must have this unique 12-character alphanumeric identifier. Here's how to set up a MAC address on your MEGA65. Here's the MAC address page in the configuration utility. Networking features will not function with a MAC address set to all zeros, which is the default. If the MAC address is all zeros, press the R key to generate a random address. You're now ready to take your MEGA65 online. Once all settings are correct, head to the Done page for the following options. Exit without saving. Abandon the modifications you've made to the settings. Be careful, all those changes will be gone. Restore factory defaults. This one resets all settings to their defaults. You can consider using this option when you have issues with the MEGA65 and things don't seem to be working right, but remember, it will destroy all of your other previous settings, your personal settings. You can also exit and reboot to onboarding screen. And this will take you back to that screen that appeared when you first took your MEGA65 out of the box and powered it on. You probably remember that from an earlier video. You can also save as defaults and exit. Now, this is the important one. Save all current settings and exit the configuration utility. Your new settings will now be in effect. Let's talk about SD cards on the MEGA65. Your MEGA65 comes with 2 SD card slots. Each really serves a different purpose and offers some flexibility to manage your data and your system files. Understanding how to use these slots effectively will enhance your experience. Let's start with the internal full-sized SD card slot. This one is located inside the case. You use this slot for system files and bundled software. Now, the MEGA65 comes with an internal SD card pre-populated with the operating system and essential software, providing a seamless retro experience right out of the box. Leave this card in place to maintain a seamless and authentic retro experience. Since it holds critical system files, I would avoid frequently removing or modifying this SD card unless it's truly necessary, or you need to do so for system updates or potentially some troubleshooting. I recommend you also keep a backup copy of this internal SD card's contents on your computer, or if you're like me, even throw a copy to your Google Drive so that you have a cloud backup. So there is a second slot. It is our external micro SD card slot. This is the one you probably want to use more frequently. This slot is accessible from the rear of the MEGA65 and is ideal for file transfers and regular updates. The convenience of accessing this slot without opening the case makes it perfect for moving files between your MEGA65 and other devices such as your Mac, Linux, or Windows PC. This card is ideal for users who frequently update or add new content to their MEGA65 or who want to experiment with different cores and different software. The ease of access makes it convenient to switch cards as needed. You can have multiple cards that are configured in multiple ways and just plug it into this external slot. Here's some additional and useful SD card information. The MEGA65 can only use one SD card slot at a time. When you insert a micro SD card in the rear slot, the system will automatically ignore the internal SD card. For major system updates or changes to the operating system, use the internal SD card, as I mentioned earlier. For minor updates, software installation, or file transfer, the external micro SD card is your card of choice since it provides that flexibility we've described earlier. Now, besides moving files using an SD card, you can also move files and do file transfers over the network. This is useful for large file transfers or frequent updates to the SD card. The MEGA65 team has also created network sharing tools to move files seamlessly between your MEGA65 and modern computers. Now, we're going to learn more about these features and additional software in Chapter 7. For now, let's learn how to prepare a brand new SD card for use in that external slot in the back of the MEGA65. Now, to prepare a new SD card for use with your MEGA65, follow these steps. It's important to ensure you're using a compatible SD card before you begin. The MEGA65 supports SDHC cards with sizes between 4 and 32 gigabytes. You should not expect older cards less than 4 gigabytes or newer SDXC cards larger than 32 gigabytes to function. Hey, they may, but don't count on it. I'll have a link down below in the video description to the cards I use. The other mistake I see MEGA65 users make, especially brand new ones, is they try and prepare their SD card on their own. You can't do it. You must use the MEGA65's built-in SD card utility. Why? Well, because the MEGA65 creates 2 partitions on that SD card, a hidden partition containing MEGA65 configuration files, the freezer menu options, computer free states, and then it creates a FAT32 partition that contains all your system files and .d81 disk images. Now, it's important to note that the MEGA65's built-in SD card utility will prepare an SD card in both the internal and the external SD card slot, so you have to be very careful. So let's talk about those options. This is very important. Always power off your MEGA65 before inserting or removing an SD card. I'm telling you now, this prevents data corruption and hardware issues. Remember that. Now, you orient the SD card correctly with the label facing up. Gently push the card in until it seats completely into place. To remove, grip the SD card by its sides and pull it out of the slot. Now, the external micro SD card works a little bit differently. You insert the micro SD card into the rear slot with the label facing up, but then you gently push the card in until it clicks into place. To remove, push the micro SD card in the slot until it clicks. This will release the SD card and force it out of the slot so that you can grab it with your 2 fingers. I can tell you from experience, I have had several issues with my MEGA65, and many of them have stemmed from me having an inexpensive and cheap SD card. Don't skimp on this one, folks. Now here's the cool thing about the MEGA65. You can bootstrap a new system. To do this, we're going to use the SD card utility. Now the SD card utility will completely erase the contents of an SD card. While the utility will ask you to select an SD card to format, it's a good practice to protect the internal SD card by removing it before using this utility. That's something I do every time. So let's go back to our bootstrapping process. Switch off the MEGA65, hold the Alt key, switch the MEGA65 back on, select option 2, which is the SD card FDisk plus format utility. The SD card utility will open and scan for inserted SD cards. Press R to rescan for a card. Choose a card slot, 0 for the internal SD card or 1 for the external micro SD card. We'll choose 1. Type delete everything, all caps, and press return. Once you press return, you're going to confirm that you're ready for that card to be erased and formatted, losing everything that's on there. You can abort the process by switching off the MEGA65. However, once the process starts, the SD card is unusable until you restart the process. Just remember that. Now, I can't say it enough, but remember, formatting will erase all data on the SD card. Ensure you have backed up any important files before proceeding, and do another thing. I speak from experience. Check to see if there's anything of value on that SD card that you wanted before you take it to the SD card utility. Yes, I have done that probably more than once. So continuing on, the SD card utility erases the SD card and creates 2 partitions, as I mentioned earlier. When finished, the utility prompts you to install the system files from the core. Pretty slick. That's new. That wasn't available when the dev kit was around. Choose a core to use. If you have an updated MEGA65 core in slot 1, select that one. Otherwise, select the factory installed MEGA65 core in slot 0. If you just received your MEGA65, slot 0 is the only option. The utility will use the chosen core to copy files to the FAT32 partition, making the card usable. I've inserted the microSD card into my Mac, and you can see the files that were transferred over to the SD card from the SD card utility. It is missing a few things. The first thing it needs is a ROM. I have downloaded the ROM from the files host, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that over. This is the most recent ROM. And here's how you can find that ROM. Go into our file host, type ROM, and you want to come down here and grab the C65 MEGA65 kernel ROM stable. You'll download that file, and what you'll notice is that that file is a bin file, a 920.395.bin in my case. What I simply do is take that file and rename it to MEGA65.ROM and then drop it right in this root directory. The MEGA65 file host contains a variety of files for your MEGA65, including ROMs, cores, and hundreds of games, demos, and applications produced by the MEGA65 community. It also includes the bundled software from the original SD card. If you no longer have the bundled software files, follow these steps to download them to transfer them to an SD card. Visit the MEGA65 file host at files.mega65.org. Download the bundled software files called MEGA65 Release SD Card - Intro Disk Extras. I'll have a link to that down in the video description below. Unzip the software, download package. Usually I double click on the file. And here are the release disk extras right here. I'm going to go ahead and drop that directly on to my desktop. After I decompress those files, these are the files that are within that archive. You can see that right here. And we have a series of .d81 disk images and a couple of .mod files. Let's go ahead and grab all of those and copy those over to our SD card. And scrolling through, you can see that we have all of those files. Let's go ahead and close these windows and eject that SD card from my Mac. Okay, that SD card is prepared. Let's plug it into our MEGA65, turn it on, and see if it works. The moment of truth. And since this is a bootstrapped SD card, it goes all the way back to the very first configuration screen we saw when we first got our MEGA65. The SD card is now ready to use and includes all that wonderful bundled software that came with the MEGA65 when you first took it out of the box. Wow, that was a lot to cover. Time to close the user's manual on Chapter 4. Hey, if you want to ask me questions directly, make suggestions on the videos, or you want to get additional insights from some other MEGA65 users, visit my Buy Me a Coffee page so you can learn how to join my Discord, where I've created a separate channel for the series so the conversation about the MEGA65 User's Guide series can continue. So get to configuring your MEGA65 and see you next time. retroCombs out.